You want to know how to attract someone who keeps pulling away. You want to understand why they vanish when things get close, only to come back when you've moved on. Let me tell you something that will flip your mindset upside down. It's not about chasing them. It's about learning how to feed the story they tell themselves. Avoidant people don't fall in love the way others do. They fall in love with space, with the chase, with the idea of you more than the reality of you. So if you get too close, too quickly, too emotionally available, they will run. But if you become the fantasy they're drawn to, if you learn to pull back strategically, to remain a little unavailable, a little mysterious, they don't leave. Because you're no longer a threat to their independence, you're no longer overwhelming, you become a dream, not a demand. Now, I'm not telling you to play games. I'm telling you to understand the psychology behind the avoidant attachment style. They were wired to associate closeness with danger, so if you offer safety by backing off, by not clinging, by not over-explaining your worth, you become irresistible. They start to wonder about you. They start to obsess over what you're doing, why you're quiet, how you're so okay without them. And that is where attraction begins. The real secret: mirror their energy, don't chase, lean back. Don't overinvest, match their effort. Let them feel your absence. Not as punishment, but as power. Because when someone fears losing themselves in love, you have to give them the space to find their way back to you. Let the fantasy live, let the silence work, and watch them lean in every time. You don't need to scream to be seen. You don't need to beg to be loved. You just need to understand what makes them feel safe enough to miss you. Avoidant people fall in love with the idea of you, not closeness. They are drawn to the version of you they can admire from a safe distance. From that space, they can imagine who you are, how you make them feel, and what it would be like to be with you, without having to deal with the messiness of real intimacy, because when things stay in the realm of fantasy, they remain in control. They don't have to be vulnerable. They don't have to risk being disappointed. They don't have to reveal their own fears, their own emotional unavailability, or their past pain. You, from a distance, feel safe. You, in their mind, are perfect. You're warm but not overwhelming, interested but not intrusive, loving but not demanding, and that's the sweet spot for an avoidant. The fantasy gives them the illusion of connection without the risk of truly being seen. But the moment real closeness arrives, when your love becomes tangible, consistent, and emotionally deep, they start to feel suffocated. It's not because they don't like you. It's because closeness to them feels dangerous. It threatens the walls they've built to protect themselves from pain. It activates old wounds, often from childhood, where love felt conditional, inconsistent, or even harmful, so they retreat, they disconnect. They say they need space or that something feels off. But what's really happening is their nervous system is going into defense mode. They're protecting themselves from the very thing they crave. And that's the paradox. Avoidant people want connection. They crave intimacy. They dream of deep love. But only if it can exist without emotional risk. They want you to be close enough to feel good, but not close enough to feel real. Because real means vulnerable. Real means uncomfortable conversations. Real means emotional exposure. So they cling to the idea of you, the version that lives in their mind, that doesn't challenge their defenses. And that's why so many people end up heartbroken in these dynamics. You think things are going well, that there's potential, that they're finally opening up. But really, they were never in love with the real you. They were in love with the story they created about you. And when that story starts to blur with reality, they pull away, not because you did something wrong, but because reality is too close, and closeness for an avoidant is the one thing they haven't yet made peace with. Closeness triggers their fear of emotional engulfment, not because they don't want love, not because they don't feel anything, but because closeness to them is overwhelming. It feels like being consumed, like their sense of self is being swallowed whole. When you try to get closer, when you reach out with warmth, with consistency, with emotional honesty, it doesn't land as safety, it lands as pressure. It lands as expectation, and for someone with an avoidant attachment style, that expectation feels like a trap. They start to feel like they're losing control, like they have to perform, like they have to be something they're not, just to keep up with your emotional intensity. That's when the walls go up. That's when the shutdown begins. Because for them, being emotionally close to someone isn't just vulnerability, it's danger. It stirs up memories, often unconscious, of feeling smothered, criticized, or dismissed. It reminds them of a time when they had to suppress their feelings just to survive in relationships. So they learned early on, distance feels safer than connection. They learned to retreat instead of reach, to shut down instead of open up. And every time closeness grows, their nervous system rings the alarm. Even if your love is gentle, even if your intentions are pure, they still feel the need to escape. Not from you, but from the feeling of being emotionally cornered. It's not that they want to push you away. It's that they believe if they don't, they'll lose themselves. They fear that being close means giving up their independence, their autonomy, their emotional boundaries. And so, when things get deep, when the bond starts to build, they pull back. Not because the connection is wrong, but because it's becoming too real, too intense, too vulnerable. They crave love, but only the kind that doesn't ask too much of them emotionally. They long for connection, but only when it doesn't threaten their sense of control. And that's the painful contradiction. They want intimacy, but their system is wired to resist it. They want to feel safe with someone, but the moment safety starts to feel close, they get scared. Because closeness to them feels like emotional engulfment, and that, more than loneliness, is what they fear the most. Chasing or emotional overavailability pushes them away, not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're doing too much emotion, too much presence, too much showing up before they're ready to receive it. For someone with an avoidant attachment style, emotional intensity feels like pressure. They don't see your availability as a gift. They experience it as a demand. You reach out often. You express your feelings clearly. You want connection, reassurance, closeness. But to them, it feels like they're being asked to show up in a way they're not ready for. When you chase, even from a place of love, you disrupt the space they need to feel safe. They start to feel crowded. They start to feel like they can't breathe, because in their world, too much closeness feels like losing control. You think being more available will make them feel secure, that giving more of your heart will bring them closer, but what it actually does is trigger their instinct to withdraw. They weren't taught that love could be calm. They weren't taught that it was safe to be seen fully. So when someone comes in and offers their heart so openly, so fearlessly, it confuses them. Instead of leaning in, they lean out. They avoid messages. They delay responses. They become distant, emotionally vague, or even cold. It's not because they don't care. It's because the weight of your emotional presence feels like too much. It threatens the emotional walls they've carefully built to stay protected. They feel like they're being pulled into something that will swallow them, so they run, not from you, but from the fear of what your emotional closeness represents. The more you try to pull them in, the more they feel the need to escape. And that's the painful truth about chasing someone avoidant. It doesn't bring you closer. It creates distance. It confirms their fear that relationships will always cost them their emotional freedom. If you want to be felt, sometimes you have to step back. If you want to be seen, sometimes you have to let silence speak. Your value doesn't increase by showing up more. Your worth isn't proven by being endlessly available. Chasing only convinces them that love is something they'll lose themselves in. And the more you try to hold them tighter, the faster they'll slip away. Playing into their fantasy keeps the attraction alive. Avoidant people are not just drawn to you. They are drawn to the story they create about you in their minds. They imagine who you are, who they want you to be, and how you fit into their world without threatening their independence. This fantasy is a safe place for them to connect. It's a place where they can feel the thrill of closeness without the risk of real vulnerability. When you play into that fantasy, you become the mystery, the possibility, the dream they want to hold on to. You don't reveal everything all at once. You keep a part of yourself just out of reach. You allow them to wonder, to guess, to fill in the blanks with their imagination. This uncertainty is magnetic for avoidant people. It gives them the illusion of control and freedom while still feeling connected. They chase the excitement of the unknown. They want to keep the possibility alive without feeling trapped. When you feed their fantasy, you're not pretending or being fake. You're simply giving them the space to engage with you on their terms. You're not pushing for emotional closeness too quickly. You're not demanding answers or commitment before they're ready. Instead, you're holding a space where attraction can grow naturally. Because real attraction, especially with avoidant people, is less about constant contact and more about the tension between presence and absence. Too much availability can kill the magic. But the right balance, where you show interest but maintain your own life and boundaries, keeps the flame burning. You become a puzzle they want to solve, a story they want to unfold. By playing into their fantasy, you tap into their deepest desire for connection that doesn't overwhelm. You become someone they want to come back to again and again. This dance between closeness and distance is where attraction thrives. It's where the heart of the avoidant person is most accessible. So instead of pushing for real intimacy too soon, lean into the mystery. Let them chase the parts of you they've imagined. Hold your own boundaries, stay strong in your self-worth, and watch how that fantasy pulls them closer, not because they feel forced, but because they choose to. This isn't about manipulation. It's about understanding the psychology of avoidance. It's about giving them the freedom to come closer at their own pace. And in doing so, you create a connection that's real, lasting, and deeply magnetic. Strategic distance builds psychological intrigue. When you pull back just enough, you create space for curiosity to grow. You allow the other person to fill in the blanks with their imagination. Distance, when used wisely, isn't about punishment or playing games. It's about creating a magnetic tension between presence and absence. This tension makes you more interesting. It makes you less predictable, and unpredictability sparks interest. Avoidant individuals especially respond to this. Because closeness often triggers their instinct to withdraw, distance feels safer. It gives them room to breathe. It reduces the pressure of emotional demands. By stepping back, you give them the freedom they crave. You show that you respect their boundaries and independence. That respect builds trust, even if it doesn't seem obvious at first. When you don't chase, when you don't flood them with attention, you actually increase your value in their eyes. They start to wonder what you're doing. They start to notice your absence. They start to miss you, and missing someone creates a powerful psychological pull. It makes them want to reach out. It makes them want to engage. It makes them want to reconnect on their terms. Strategic distance allows the relationship to breathe. It gives the avoidant person a chance to process their feelings without feeling overwhelmed. It also gives you clarity. You're not stuck in constant pursuit or emotional exhaustion. You get to observe how they respond when you create healthy space. Do they respect your boundaries? Do they come closer or pull away? This insight is invaluable. It helps you decide how much more space or closeness is healthy. It also prevents you from losing yourself in the relationship, because when you chase or cling, you risk losing your identity. When you use strategic distance, you maintain your power. You keep your sense of self intact. You become someone who is emotionally balanced and grounded, and that balance is magnetic. It draws people in. It invites them to approach, not run. So remember, distance isn't your enemy. It's a tool, a way to build psychological intrigue, a way to keep the spark alive. Use it wisely, hold your boundaries, give space, and watch how attraction grows naturally without force or pressure. You must become comfortable with space and silence. In relationships, especially with avoidant individuals, space isn't just empty time. It's a vital part of connection. It's the pause that allows feelings to settle. The silence that invites reflection. When you panic at silence, you fill it with noise. Texts, calls, questions, reassurances. But that noise can push someone away faster than silence ever could. Silence gives both people a chance to breathe. It lets emotions calm. It allows the mind to process. Avoidant people often need this quiet space to feel safe, because constant communication can feel like pressure. It can feel like being trapped. When you embrace silence instead of fearing it, you show emotional maturity. You show you're not dependent on constant validation. You show you can be present without needing to control the situation. Space also teaches patience. It reminds you that not every moment needs to be filled. That love doesn't have to be loud to be real. You learn to tolerate uncertainty, to sit with discomfort without reacting impulsively. This creates stability for you and for them. Being comfortable with space means trusting the process. Trusting that connection can grow even when you're not always in touch. That absence doesn't mean loss. It means respect for boundaries. It means honoring the natural ebb and flow of emotions. You're no longer desperate to fix everything instantly. You accept that some things take time, that growth isn't always linear. This patience creates deeper attraction. It shows confidence. It signals that you value yourself enough to wait, to hold back when needed, to give the other person room to come closer on their own terms. When you master space and silence, you stop chasing. You stop overwhelming. You become a calm presence. Someone who doesn't need to be constantly reassured. Someone who can sit in quiet without fear, and that calm draws people in because it's rare, because it's powerful, because it speaks to a deep sense of security. So if you want a connection that lasts, learn to be comfortable with space. Learn to embrace silence and watch how the relationship transforms from frantic pursuit to steady, magnetic connection. So remember, the true power isn't in chasing or overwhelming. It's in holding your ground with calm confidence. By respecting space, embracing silence, and honoring boundaries, you create an irresistible energy that draws them back, again and again. Because when you become someone who values themselves enough to wait, you show them what real love feels like, safe, steady, and strong. And that is the secret to building a connection that lasts.